Are you an African-American woman?
I identify as black.
I probably have more right saying that I'm black than I do saying that I'm female.
She will never be black in the same way that Caitlyn Jenner or Laverne Cox are women.
To identify as black as a white person is seen as very colonial. But couldn't you apply the same logic towards men identifying as women?
I think many people have come to appreciate her commitment to racial identification.
Well, she's nuts, but she's at least committed to being nuts. Is that what? I don't know.
And I would just like to say for the record that I feel like I'm wallowing in privilege right now.
You're anti-trans.
I want to look at this really quickly. This person seems to have at least some legitimacy in some people's eyes. This Dr. Todd Grande guy. I don't know how I feel about him. I've seen The Odd Thing. Your husband loathes this guy. I don't know many men that like these kind of therapist YouTubers. A lot of them tend to find them like really annoying. I don't really know how I feel about him. But I guess maybe this is kind of a good test because they've got, does transgender ideology defend transracial ideology? Rachel Dolezal case analysis. I'm kind of interested in whether he kind of sees any kind of parallel here. Sometimes these people are very scared of saying what they think. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're like just literally captured. Sometimes they are not. Who knows?
Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the case of Rachel Dolezal? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of Rachel Dolezal, then I'll move to my analysis.
I think you should maybe consider opening his mouth a little more when he speaks.
Rachel Dolezal was born in Lincoln County, Montana on November 12, 1977. Her father, Lawrence, and her mother, Ruth Ann, were both white. They traced their origin back to Czechoslovakia, Sweden, and Germany. The couple considered themselves to be Christian. Rachel had one older biological brother. When Rachel was a teenager growing up in Montana, her parents adopted 4 black children, 3 from the United States and 1 from Haiti. Rachel was homeschooled and completed high school in 1996. In 2000, she earned a bachelor's degree from a college in Mississippi. Rachel then attended Howard University, which is a historically black college located in Washington, D.C. In 2000, Rachel married a medical student named Kevin Moore. He is a black man. Rachel graduated in 2002 with her master's degree in fine arts. Rachel and Kevin divorced in 2004. At some point, Rachel started representing herself as black. In 2009, she started changing her appearance so that...
Even saying, like, representing yourself as black, like, can you say that? Like, if you're doing certain hairstyles or, like, darkening your skin, are you, like, representing yourself as black when you kind of can't do that? Again, we kind of get to the questions of, are we saying that based on, like, stereotypes, stuff like that? Social constructs, which race is, to be fair.
That people would believe that she was black. Sometime around 2011, she darkened her skin and started perming her hair. Her brother, Ezra, said that when he moved in with Rachel in 2012, she told him that people in the area believed that she was black and cautioned him not to blow her cover. Rachel found a job at a college in the state of Washington in 2010. The school would later clarify that she was an instructor and not a professor. When she was there...
Like, to me, she just looks like some mid-30s, like, chav with, like, 5 kids that you'd see, well, in various places, you know. Pushing a pram down a high street, smoking over it, and shouting at little Jaden, you know.
She taught a lot of classes about African-American culture. In 2014, Rachel became the president of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People chapter in Spokane, Washington, otherwise known as the NAACP. During this time, Rachel had a history of making claims that she was being targeted because of her race, like she was being harassed because she was black. On June 11, 2015, Rachel was being interviewed by a reporter that had looked into her past a bit. Rachel...
Yeah, it's based on, like, stereotypes. It's just interesting how it... Like, the reason I'm interested in the transracial thing is that it just mirrors transgender in a lot of ways. And honestly, anyone probably has more of a case saying that they're a different race to what they look like than they do saying that they're the other sex. You know what I mean? Like, I understand that I'm, like, very slightly, like, Caribbean in terms of my heritage. I probably couldn't say that I'm black but presumably there is a black person out there somewhere that I'm very slightly related to. You know what I mean? I probably have more right saying that I'm black than I do saying that I'm female. Does that make sense?
She'll claim that her father was a black man named Albert Wilkerson. The reporter asked her if...
I mean, this person is just literally lying, obviously. Like, she's just lying about her heritage. Obviously, some part of black culture appeals to this person. Maybe they met a lot of black people in school, grew up around a lot of them, or in college or something like that. That's fair enough. Identifying with something is fine, but like identifying as like a different race, that's kind of a whole other matter, you know?
Albert was her father. She said that he was. The reporter said, "I was wondering if your dad is really an African-American man." Rachel responded, "That's a very, I don't know what you're implying." The reporter said, "Are you African-American?" Rachel responded, I don't understand the question. I did tell you that, yes, that's my dad." Rachel abruptly left after...
Oh, I remember this video. It's so awkward. This woman like squirming.
Is that your dad?
Yeah, that's my dad.
She knows, like, fuck me.
This man right here is your father? Right there?
You have a question about that?
Yes, ma'am. I
Okay.
was wondering if your dad really is an African-American man.
That's a very, I don't know what you're implying.
Are you African-American?
I don't understand.
Her brothers were black. As in, like, did she have like a different father, or did they like foster some kids?
The question of, I did tell you.
Yeah, because like growing up around the culture, I understand. Like identifying with it, like taking style cues, stuff like that. I understand. It's when you start saying that that's literally what you are and like trying to gaslight the world into agreeing with you. Like that's when it goes too far, right?
That yes, that's my dad. And he was unable to come in January.
Are your parents, are they white?
Bye then.
You've started a discussion on race and what it means in this country. Did this come as a surprise to you, or did you always expect the lid would be blown off your story at some point?
The timing of it was a shock. I mean, wow. The timing was completely unexpected. As to the second question, I did feel that at some point I would need to address the complexity of my identity.
Let me just say, we can't talk about the big picture that you have created without talking about the small picture first.
Right.
Complexity of my identity. How is it not like the same thing?
Let me just ask you the question in simple terms again, because
I never heard a satisfactory answer as to why you can identify as like a different sex, but not as a different race. Like what's the difference, you know?
you've sent mixed signals over the years. Are you an African-American woman?
I identify as black.
You identify as black. Let me put a picture up of you in your early 20s, though.
Mm-hmm.
And when you see this picture, is this an African-American woman? Or is that a Caucasian woman?
That's not in my early 20s, but...
That's a little younger, I guess? Yeah.
I think I was 16 in that picture.
Is she a Caucasian woman or an African-American woman?
I would say that visibly she would be identified as white by people who see her.
But at the time, were you identifying yourself as African-American?
The other thing is you do actually get like mixed race people that do look like very white, but they actually have like a black parent. That does happen.
In that picture, during that time, no.
Your parents were asked this question this week and they didn't have any trouble answering it. Here's what they said. She's clearly our birth daughter and we're clearly Caucasian. That's just a fact. Your father went on to say she's a very talented woman doing work she believes in. Why can't she do that as a Caucasian woman, which is what she is?
That was the interview where she got caught sending herself death threats. Oh my God.
How do you answer that question?
Well, first of all,
Listen, when's someone going to discover that Brianna Wu was sending herself death threats? I don't know if that's true. I'm just, yeah, you know.
I really don't see why they're in such a rush to whitewash some of the work that I have done and who I am and how I've identified. And this goes back to a very early age with my self-identification with the Black experience as a very young child.
When did it start?
I would say
Identifying with an experience now, wow.
about 5 years old.
You began identifying yourself as African-American?
I was drawing self-portraits with the brown crayon instead of the peach crayon and black, black curly hair and, yeah, that was.
I was drawing myself as a black. Oh, it's just so, it's so weird. We go back to like memories of like childhood that confirm and like inflate the fuck out of them. I did the exact same shit.
That was how I was portraying myself.
So it started way back then, Rachel. When did you start, and I'll use the word, you can correct me if you don't like it, when did you start deceiving people and telling them you were black when you knew their questions were pointed in a different direction? When someone said to you back then, are you black or white? And you'd say, I'm black. You didn't say, I identify as black. You'd say, I'm black. When did you start deceiving people?
Well, I do take exception to that because it's a little more complex than me identifying as black or answering a question of, are you black or white? I was actually identified when I was doing human rights work in North Idaho as first transracial, and then when some of the opposition to some of the human rights work I was doing came forward and started, the next newspaper article identified me as being a biracial woman, and then the next article, when there were actually burglaries, nooses, et cetera, was this is happening to a black woman, and I never corrected.
Well, why didn't you correct it? You knew it wasn't true.
Well, because it's more complex than being true or false in that particular instance.
But the cynics and the skeptics will say you didn't correct those reports, because it worked for you, because it helped you meet your goals. Is that fair?
I don't necessarily think that's fair. I think over not just at that time, but before then too, I have had to answer those who haven't seen me, and because I'm a black hairstylist, have styled my hair in many different ways, have been identified as mixed, light-skinned, black, etc. And I've had to answer a lot of questions throughout my life.
You've changed your appearance. Your complexion appears darker than it did in the photos of you as a young lady. Have you done something to darken your complexion?
I certainly don't stay out of the sun, and I also don't, as some of the critics have said, put on blackface as a performance.
Yeah, let me address that, because some people have said that the way you've changed your opinion is akin to putting on blackface. And Jonathan Capehart wrote in the Washington Post, blackface remains highly racist, no matter how down with the cause a white person is. Do you understand what he means by that?
Absolutely.
Do you agree with
I have a huge issue with blackface. This is not some freak birth of a nation mockery blackface performance. This is on a very real, connected level. How I've actually had to go there with the experience, not just a visible representation, but with the experience. And the point at which that really solidified was when I got full custody of Isaiah, and he said, "You're my real mom," and he's in high school. And for that to be something that is plausible, I certainly can't be seen as white and be Isaiah's mom.
Couple of quick points. There are reports that at one time in particular, you looked at a
Got called an N-word on my way to work today, so affirming I came. Jesus Christ. I can't remember if it's something I've said myself in the past or someone I've heard saying it, but the idea that being a trans woman, or someone wolf whistling you or sexually harassing you and enjoying it because it's gender affirming, it kind of makes you think of that. Quite dark in a way.
Friend of yours, a guy named Albert Wilkinson, and you told friends of yours that he was your father. He is an African-American man who is clearly not your father. Was that done to enhance your resume as an African-American woman, or was there another reason for that?
There's another reason. Yeah, he actually approached me in North Idaho, and we just we connected on a very intimate level as family. And
but why point out an African-American man and say that is my father when you know that your father is a Caucasian man?
Albert Wilkinson is my dad, and any man can be a father. Not every man can be a dad.
Your lawsuit against Howard University in 2002, where you claim.
What does that even mean? What are you fucking talking about? What's that got to do with which one of those people is your father? Well, a father and a dad. Come on, bro. Seriously?
You were discriminated against because you were
Buffy St. Marie. I've heard that name before.
Pregnant white woman. Do you understand how people could hear that and say, here's another example? She says she identified herself as being African-American or black from a young age, but here's a case where she identified herself as a white woman because it worked for her under the circumstances.
The reasons for my full tuition scholarship being removed and my teaching position as well, my TA position, were that other people needed opportunities, and you probably have white relatives and that, they can afford to help you with your tuition. And I thought that was an injustice.
Would you make the same choices, given all that's happened, and given the fallout from it, but also the positive side of the discussion that has come out of it? Would you make the same choices you've made, Rachel?
I would.
And what do you want to come out of it? What discussion do you want to prompt?
Well, as much as this discussion has somewhat been at my expense recently in a very sort of viciously inhumane way, come out of the woodwork, and the discussion is really about what it is to be human, and I hope that really can drive at the core of definitions of race, ethnicity, culture, self-determination, personal agency, and ultimately empowerment.
But when you say you would make the same choices, wouldn't you go back and perhaps be a little more...
personal agency, basically. Wanting to be able to call yourself something, even if it's not true. Listen, what we're looking at is the difference between a lie that's socially acceptable and a lie that isn't. And I guess what I'm interested in is well, what's the difference between those two things? Why does one take off when the other doesn't? Because this is never gained traction. The transracial shit has never been it's never been legitimized anywhere that I'm aware of.
Transparent about certain things in your life, or correct some of the things that were said about you that you knew to be incorrect?
There are probably a couple interviews that I would do a little differently if circumstances, in retrospect, I knew what I know now. But overall, my life has been one of survival, and the decisions that I have made along the way, including my identification, have been to survive and to, carry forward in my journey and life continuum.
You resigned your position at the NAACP out in Spokane. Do you feel you could have been as effective? By the way, you should get a lot of credit. A lot of people feel you breathed new life into that chapter. Could you have been as successful? Could you have had as big an impact had you been a Caucasian woman as opposed to being identified as an African-American woman?
I don't know. I guess I haven't had the opportunity to to experience that in those shoes. So I'm not sure.
And finally, your two sons, Isaiah and Franklin, are here in the studio.
They are.
If I were to ask them if you're a black woman or a Caucasian woman, how do you think they'd answer?
Well, I actually was talking to one of my sons yesterday, and he said, Mom, racially, you're human, and culturally, you're black. And, so, I mean, we've had these conversations over the years. I do know that they support the way that I identify, and they support me. Ultimately, we have each other's back. We're the Three Musketeers.
Rachel Dolezal. Rachel, thanks for talking to us this morning. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And you can weigh in with your thoughts on Rachel.
How nice. Anyway, sorry, we were watching something.
The reporter asked her if her parents were white. As the news of Rachel's true racial identity became widespread, the NAACP released a statement supporting her leadership. Not long after this, a petition was launched to remove
She found them a few minutes before the interview. Oh my God.
her from the organization. On June 15, Rachel resigned from her position as chapter president. In October of 2016, Rachel legally changed her name to a phrase that means gift of God, but later she stated that she will continue to use Rachel Dolezal as her public persona. She changed her name to increase her probability of finding work. In 2021, Rachel indicated that she was starting an OnlyFans account, which is traditionally used for adults-only content.
Yeah, it looks like it. I don't know if you can see how many members or how much they make. Interesting. Wow. Rachel Dolezal's OnlyFans.
Content. Rachel said that she was going to post artwork, makeup tutorials, fitness content, and images of her feet. It's good to see Rachel get her foot in the door with OnlyFans. I'm sure she will put her best foot forward. It's important that she avoids getting cold feet or dragging her feet.
I mean, listen, there's so many men out there that will fap to literally anything. If you're anywhere well known at all, then you're probably going to get at least some traction on something like OnlyFans. I'm sure there's some kind of niche for white women that think they're black.
Otherwise, she may shoot herself in the foot. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts on a few areas that stood out to me in this case.
Yeah, I watched Ollie London debating H3H3, and I don't know, he wasn't doing a very good job, but I agreed with him over Ethan. But then Ethan was just trying to lolcow milk him. He wasn't even taking it seriously. So it's there was this weird disconnect between someone actually trying to have a sensible or serious conversation, and then fucking Ethan Klein just fucking around. Yeah, but what about your lunchbox, dude? Christ, painful watch.
Item number 1 is Rachel's argument in her own defense. Rachel has stated that her identification as black is authentic, although she acknowledges it is not based on her.
Documentary on Rachel is interesting. Her sons have a black dad. Okay, makes sense. They basically just put up with their craziness because what else are they going to do? I guess. I mean, listen, this person might be a good mother despite whatever weird shit is going on. And I guess to her kids, that's what's going to matter more than anything,
Actual ancestry. She believes that people should challenge the construct of race.
Psychology in Seattle. I have to look into them. I've not heard of them before.
Because it is a key feature of evolving human consciousness. Rachel stated that what she was doing is not a blackface performance.
Yeah, the Ollie London thing I watched was him arguing against transition with H3H3. And H3H3 was taking the pro-trans position, but it was clear it wasn't a very serious conversation for him. It was about, oh, here's that weird guy that thought he was Korean for a while,
Not intended to be offensive. Rachel said that race is more fluid than gender because race is entirely a social construct. She has never questioned being a girl or a woman, but for as long as she can remember, whiteness has felt foreign to her. She didn't choose to feel this way or be this way. It's just who she is. Rachel said, what other choice is there than to be exactly who we are?
I think I've heard of Martina Big as well. Jesus Christ, what is going on there? I don't even know what to say about that. Jesus fucking Christ, man.
Item number 2. Rachel has attracted some attention for claims that she made other than her claim of being black. A few examples. When she was young, she said that her family killed animals for food using a bow and arrow and lived in a teepee. Her mother stated that her father did live in a teepee in 1974, which of course is 3 years before Rachel was born. Rachel said that her parents mistreated her frequently, which included beating her. They denied her claims. Rachel claimed that she lived in South Africa for a time when she was young. Her parents disputed this claim. In 2002, after Rachel moved out of the family house, her parents and her siblings moved to South Africa and functioned as missionaries. They were there until 2006. They said that Rachel never even visited them when they were in South Africa. Rachel has repeatedly stated that she was a victim of harassment related to her race. She said that in September 2009, a noose was left on her.
Her hair is terrible. Well, it's probably like full of chemicals and stuff to make it look that way, you know.
Porch, when she lived in Idaho, she claimed that she was a victim of 8 documented hate crimes. She said that she received a hate mail package at a P.O. box on one occasion. When the police investigated this claim, they found that the package did not have a postage stamp. Whoever placed the package in the P.O. box had the key to the box, unless it was a postal worker who was trying to harass her. It would appear as though Rachel has problems telling the truth. It's not just restricted to her racial identity, but something that permeates to other areas of her life. Item number 3 is how people have responded to Rachel's claims. Many of Rachel's claims have caused controversy, but the one that is really the center of attention would be her claim about being black. There are people who criticize Rachel, and there are those who support her. Let's take a look at some of the criticisms and some of the supportive arguments. Starting with the criticisms, Rachel has taken the construct of white guilt and played it to the maximum. She has committed cultural appropriation. What Rachel is doing is the equivalent of blackface and is extremely offensive to black people. Moving to the arguments on behalf of Rachel's position, Rachel has the right to call herself black. Only she can decide her identity. Rachel has worked to obtain...
Like, it's true. If she decides that she's black and that's her identity, then only she can decide that. The problem is, like, when you start getting other people to believe it, or at least trying to, like, ultimately you can't really, like, control how people think of you.
Social justice on behalf of black people. She appears to be authentic. Rachel was raised with black siblings. It's not like she just pulled this identity out of nowhere.
Yeah, that's the weird thing as well. Like, the way she talks, it almost sounds, if I'm going to be a trans narcissist for a moment, it almost kind of sounds like she took some of the, like, trans logic and was like, okay, well, I can use that for, like, black stuff. But it kind of seems like there's something a bit deeper here. So it almost seems like there's kind of a similar impulse and that it's not really related in any way, if that makes sense. Like, she didn't get any ideas from anyone. It's just kind of, this is how people express it when they feel and identify differently to what they actually are.
When I look at how people feel about Rachel...
But then the problem is, obviously, this person is white. So it's like, well, however you feel, there is still a material reality.
In my opinion, when this whole controversy started in 2015, the majority of people were against her. She was viewed as someone who violated social norms to such a degree that she was to be dismissed entirely. She was not genuine. She was just trying to deceive people. Over time, however, I think many people have come to appreciate her commitment to racial identification, even if they disagree with the idea of being transracial, like even if they don't believe that is a legitimate construct.
So she's full of shit, but at least she's persistent? Is that what...
I think many people have come to appreciate her commitment to racial identification.
Well, she's nuts, but she's at least committed to being nuts. Is that what... I don't know. Okay, sure.
Even if they disagree with the idea of being transracial, like even if they don't believe that is a legitimate construct. Moving to item number 4, how do I conceptualize Rachel's attitudes and behaviors? This is just a theory, my opinion. Rachel's parents adopted black children. She was close with her siblings and identified with their experiences. Rachel connected with issues that many black people face.
Yeah, this is like I was saying earlier, like the difference between identifying with something, identifying as something, you know. I think it's an important distinction.
She strongly desired to have racial justice. Being white, she felt limited in how much she could advocate for racial equality. But identifying as black gave her a whole new avenue and legitimacy to engage in social justice endeavors. In addition to the advantage of gaining a better position to advocate for justice, Rachel was powerfully attracted to the idea that people might view her personally as a victim. She knew that black people have been discriminated against and suffered many other forms of racial injustice, and she wanted to tap into that part of the experience.
I kind of feel tempted to feel that way about certain kinds of people that take on trans identity without actually doing anything to transition. Sometimes it does feel like they want to be able to identify their way into that kind of... They want to not be like the white cis majority or whatever, even though that's just clearly what they are. And it's a strange impulse. I guess that's what he was saying earlier with like the idea of like it being white guilt taken to an extreme or something, but like cis guilt or something. I think it's a very toxic impulse. Like, I don't know. We like things like intersectionality are so powerful in certain areas where the impulse ends up being to put down people that we perceive as like privileged. So the people that are supposedly privileged in these circles, so they're not going to be like incentivized to identify out of said privilege, which really isn't a good thing in my opinion.
She wanted to steal it and claim it as her own. Rachel was excited that people would get angry on her behalf because she was harassed based on her race. From her point of view, this made her an even more powerful advocate for racial justice. She wasn't just speaking for other people, she was speaking for herself as a victim. She knew firsthand what it was like to experience hatred and discrimination. Rachel's need to pretend being a victim could indicate that she is insecure, selfish, and grandiose. Item number 5. Some people look at the case of Rachel Dolezal and think that perhaps her claims have a deeper or subtle meaning or intent. That is, perhaps she's attempting to expose perceived logical flaws regarding the transgender ideology or philosophy. By saying that she is black when she is clearly white, Rachel is pointing out a popular criticism.
I mean, listen, it's possible. It does to me seem like there's more going on. Like, it's interesting how this is someone who like grew up around like other black people, or black people, not other black people. Like, I don't know. I think it's always going to be possible that it is some kind of like troll in a way. But I mean, she goes around now, like she's still doing this. Like, what's she called? Like Nkechi something. Yeah, I mean, she's still called this, presumably. There's still some kind of commitment to it. Like, you'd think if it was like a Josh Saiter type deal, but like comparing it to Transrace, you'd think she'd come out eventually. Especially now the tide's turning, but like, it doesn't seem like that's the case. I don't know. I'm inclined to think that there's like a similar thing going on, but applied to race rather than it being some kind of stunt or some kind of, because like this person also like, they were like a president of like NAACP. That's an awful long way to go to make a point like that. You know what I mean? Unless you have a really like racist opinions to the point where you go that deep cover. It just sounds like a lot. I don't know. I'm not sold on the idea that that's the case. And also, like, if you're thinking about this as like a critique of like trans issues, you're implying that that's what this person's thinking about at all, when maybe that's not the case. Like, maybe we're just kind of centering ourselves again on something that like, that doesn't actually concern us, you know, which is quite common, unfortunately. Is Josh Saiter actually transracial now? Oh, okay. Wow. Do you think he like regrets outing himself as not actually trans after like 6 months? Because like he's never gonna get the same results. This feels like diminishing returns now. Like the trans joke kind of, I don't know. I think this might just be a one-off joke. I'm not sure, but like, Jesus fucking Christ. I don't know. I guess he's trying to kickstart some kind of comedy career. I mean, I understood his point about like transgender identity, and I kind of agreed with it to an extent. And I really couldn't tell whether he was like real or not with the trans shit, because I've seen too many other supposed trans women presenting even less feminine than he has, you know? But at the same time, like, I don't know. It was funny for a short while. It's diminishing returns at this point. Like, wow. You might want to come up with a new thing, bro.
Of transgender ideology, namely the...
Yeah, I think he should have kept it going way longer. Like, there is the chance that Lily Tino is like a much more long-form version of Josh Saiter, like much more committed, but I don't know. We're not going to find out if that's true until we find out, so...
idea that anyone can call themselves anything they want with no physical criteria being met. Rachel might be essentially trying to say that transgender is very similar to transracial. Another way to look at this is that the acceptance of transgender ideology protects Rachel as transracial. The acceptance of being transgender ushered in a new era of tolerance that makes room for people who are trans.
Yeah, this is what I mean though. Like, well, why is one of them accepted and the other not? I don't know if it's to do with like something like slavery or something, where to identify as black as a white person is seen as very colonial. But couldn't you apply the same logic towards men identifying as women? Bearing in mind women have been subjugated for like most of history until very recently.
Transracial. In a way, Rachel is challenging people to follow through with their own beliefs. If they're committed to the transgender philosophy, how can they not approve of transracial philosophy? How can Rachel be wrong as transracial if other people are not wrong as transgender? In this peculiar way, Rachel has become a hero to some critics of transgender ideology. She's taken the concept of transition to such an extreme that people are now looking with skepticism at any concept involving a transition. This is an interesting theory about Rachel's strategy, but I don't think she's that complex. Her behavior does not represent a strategic commentary on postmodernistic thought.
Yeah, I agree with this. I think he's right here.
Or gender identity.
I've heard use the term woman face to describe the oppressors putting on performance of femalehood, which to them is unironically man-made femininity. Yeah, I understand like the connection. I tend to be I think woman face is quite a difficult criticism to make, because what is a man doing woman face and what is a man being gender non-conforming? Like, it can be quite easy to kind of cross those things, you know what I mean?
I think that Rachel became transracial strictly for reasons related to race. I don't believe there's any crossover to the area of.
Yeah, it seems, I agree with him. It seems more to me that there's some kind of similar mechanism where it's like your identity kind of detaching from who you actually are. But is the answer to affirm that? Would the answer be to treat Rachel Dolezal for all intents and purposes as if she's a black woman?
Of gender. I don't think she's criticizing transgender ideology subtly or at all.
Well, she is, but like more unknowingly. Because truthfully, you can't not make the comparison.
For that matter, using it to advance the transracial movement. This brings me to item number 6. Regardless of whether or not it was Rachel's intent, is the argument that transgender ideology legitimizes transracial ideology valid? I think there is no logical way to escape the idea that it does. If gender and race are both...
Listen, fucking hell. I was surprised. I sort of assumed he'd sort of play it safe, but yeah, he's right. I agree.
Largely social constructs, then who's to say that one domain can be fluid while the other domain must remain static? Looking at the transgender philosophy, the concept of sex is different.
I have a lot of respect for this, honestly.
Than gender. Sex is biological. A person is born male or female, but gender captures the socially constructed norms, behaviors, and roles associated with sex. When a transgender person identifies as the opposite gender, they are really talking about living the experience.
Drag gets pretty close. I don't mind GNC. I think women can kind of tell when the performance is insulting to them as a woman and when it's just a guy in cute stuff. Yeah, I think usually I agree. I definitely do come across people, and maybe it's just like retards on Twitter, which, you know, I try not to see those kinds of people as like a microcosm of larger people if I can help it, and that's part of why I don't really go on there very often. Like, I get the odd one that seems to call like literally everything like woman face, and it's like, okay, bro. There has to be some kind of limit here, because otherwise you're like actually reinforcing the same offensive stereotypes that you are claiming someone else is like reinforcing, you know?
Experience of that opposite gender. They feel as though that gender expression better fits.
I mean, with drag, I think drag probably used to be more of a caricature of woman than it is nowadays. Like, quite a lot of what I see nowadays, it's a bit more like costumey often. And like, I don't know, it's hard to explain what I mean. Like costumey, kind of not necessarily even trying to look like human or anything like that. You know what I mean? I think it depends. It depends on who's doing it. And like, it doesn't have to be like woman face. It doesn't have to be like some kind of stereotype, for sure.
Fits with their identity. One could argue that it's all about being treated and viewed by society in a certain way. Now, of course, there's more to transgender ideology than just that, but experiencing daily life as the opposite gender is an important part of it. Applying the same logic to transracial ideology, what if somebody wants to experience life as another race, and they feel as though the experience of that other race better fits with their identity? How are they some type of terrible person for identifying in accordance with their feelings?
It's not really about, like, are they a terrible person? I mean, it's being made that way because Rachel Dolezal is a white woman co-opting, like, black identity, and that's a sore spot, especially in America. Hang on, let me just get that one more time.
Fits with their identity. How are they some type of terrible?
But yeah, it's more when you start forcing it on other people and telling other people they have to accept a reality that just doesn't line up with what they see and perceive. And that they should listen to other people instead of forming their own opinions, which I try and avoid as much as I can. I think as much as possible, people should form their own opinions.
Terrible person for identifying in accordance with their feelings. Furthermore, one could argue that the debate is academic. It's not illegal to be transgender or to be transracial, If a person wants to be either one or both, they have the right to do that. Whether the person will be accepted, of course, is another story. Legitimizing any movement.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's forcing acceptance that I think the problem is here. That is where the problem is. Like, truthfully, if someone identifies as something they're not, I don't actually care in principle. It's this like mass movement to like pillory anyone that disagrees. And like, truthfully, I just don't identify as anything. I just want to like feminize.
Movement, which is based only on the beliefs of the individual, is not the domain of science. It is the domain of opinion. Society needs to decide which social constructs are allowed to be fluid and which ones are fixed.
Honestly, I'm feeling this. Like, he's not being like abrasive about it as well, which is good. But it's true. Like, you know, you're talking about when it comes to like transgender identity, you're talking about belief. You're not talking about like science or anything like that, you know?
Now, some people may respond to the transgender, transracial similarity argument by saying, fine, the parallels between transgender and transracial may be difficult to deny, but Rachel Dolezal is not really transracial because she lied to people about her white ancestry. She tried to hide it from people.
Mate, as if trans people never pretend that they're literally like the other sex. Or like pretend that they're intersex. That happens. I saw a study, like, it's not great because it's like very small numbers. But there are certainly trans people that pretend they have some kind of like hermaphroditic condition or something else that might that you can't really see and you can't really find out to the contrary, but that to them seems to like more legitimize their identity. You know what I mean? It certainly happens.
Well, one could argue that she was simply trying to avoid being criticized. She was trying to avoid exactly what ended up happening to her anyway. Or perhaps she was trying to manipulate people. This is one of the difficulties with both transgender and transracial ideology. If a person is lying, nothing...
Or pretend they knew since age 2. Yeah, of course. I mean, she did something similar, talking about as a kid, like drawing herself with like darker crayons and stuff.
Nothing can be done about it. There's no way to know for certain.
I mean, to me, it seems like they kind of use those like memories as like confirmation bias. Like when you're unhappy about something, when you feel empty in some kind of way, and you don't know why, you're going to like speculate. You're going to think about your childhood and stuff. You're going to think about what might have led up to that. And those kind of memories, if you focus on them, can form that kind of confirmation bias. And that is exactly what happened to me.
Only that person knows the truth. Moving to item number 7. One thing I find so interesting about Rachel Dolezal is that by being a pioneer in the relatively new transracial movement, she has drawn hatred from just about everybody. I think it has eased up over the last few years, as I mentioned, but for a while, it was pretty intense. White people found her offensive, black people found her insulting, transgender people believed that she was making fun of them and eroding their efforts to gain widespread...
Yeah, of course they did. Everything's about us. Everything's about us, listen.
...acceptance. It was hard to find a group that approved of Rachel's behavior or identity. Yet, Rachel soldiered on. She has never backed down. I'm very curious as to how history will judge Rachel. 10, 20, or 30 years from now, will people look at her as a brave pioneer who ushered in a new era of construct fluidity, or as a punchline who is forgotten as quickly as she was discovered? I think the real problem for Rachel's legacy is that there doesn't appear to be that many transracial people as compared to transgender people. There aren't many people who feel as...
Hey, that might be an explanation. Just a lot more transgender people than transracial.
...though they are a different race.
Like, imagine if it was the other way around. Would transracial have been the thing that stuck and transgender didn't? Who knows? Like, it's hard for me to draw enough distinctions between the two of them to actually, like, to say that I think otherwise. And that's the thing, I don't know. People try and draw distinctions but never actually explain any of them. So that's why I kind of question this so much.
Rachel is alone on her adventure through the undiscovered country of fluid race. Those are my thoughts in the case of Rachel Dolezal. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comments section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be as intriguing as jumping in with both feet. Thanks for watching.
That was very interesting. I respect him, honestly. Like, for someone who's quite a mainstream creator and has a big following, I kind of expected him to like toe the line and kind of err on the side of caution. So I'm glad he didn't. Like, we need people to be honest ultimately. And I know, I thought that was a good video. How do you feel that there is a new apex intersectional minority? I don't know, but I love that term. I'm going to have to start using that. Apex intersectional minority. That's amazing. Women have been oppressed for thousands of years. Black people don't have a monopoly on oppression. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Like, I guess you can't really make quite the same criticism of like female to male, but then female to male, it sounds like you're trying to escape oppression, and escaping oppression doesn't mean you're literally then the other sex, you know? Like, yeah, like the problem is there's like oppression wherever you look. If a male person is like appropriating womanhood, is that not an issue in the same way that a white person appropriating blackness would be? Like, it's interesting. I don't know. I like thinking about this kind of thing. And I wish more people would be honest. Like, I don't know. I watched a bunch of videos before, at the same time I watched the Ollie London thing. And where people were more like trans affirming, they just weren't really explaining anything. Like, I can't remember what it was. I watched some, hang on. Can I find it again? I don't know. Oh, it was this one. Jesus Christ.
People drawing a lot of false comparisons between the idea of being transracial and being transgender. Who better than a cisgender white lady to explain why that's a load of misinformation? I would just like to say for the record that I feel like I'm wallowing in privilege right now.
Try not to be sick.
For those of you who've been off the internet and avoiding all media entirely for the past few weeks, Rachel Dolezal is the formerly thought of as African-American spokesperson for the Spokane, Washington chapter of the NAACP, who was recently outed as white by her white parents. Moving past Dolezal's questionable, to say the least, life decisions, I wanted to focus in on this problematic idea that she's quote-unquote transracial in the same way that, say, Caitlyn Jenner is transgender. Because equating the two simultaneously devalues both the black and the transgender experience.
Yeah, like, this makes no sense.
Haphazardly tossing both of them into the giant bucket labeled othering. They go to transracial equals transgender.
Like, it's just, we're like avoiding actually thinking about any kind of criticism. It's so bizarre. I ran into this over and over looking into this whole thing.
Gender argument is that, hey, both race and gender are social constructs, so we're basically talking about the same thing, right? Wrong. In the same way that plums and grapefruit are both fruit.
And it's like, did she listen to like what Rachel Dolezal was saying in any of these like interviews or anything? Like the kind of language, the way she explains it? It's very similar. How can you like pretend? Like, oh, they're like fruit. One's this and one's that. Wow. Amazing. Next, you're going to say they're different because we use different words.
As implied by the fruit in the word grapefruit, they're highly different things, and not only because plums just kind of look like adorable butts. Whereas a transgender person transitioning is a process of aligning their internal and likely inborn gender identity with their outward physical appearance and embodiment. A so-called transracial person like Rachel Dolezal actively passing involves splitting oneself in two. For instance, Time magazine writer Meredith Melnick defined passing as
it just doesn't make any sense. Why do these people do this?
Quote, identifying with and representing oneself as one race while denying ancestry of another. Another definition published in the Ohio State Law Journal takes an even harsher tack. Passing is a deception that enables a person to adopt certain roles or identities from which he would be barred by prevailing social standards in the absence of his misleading conduct. That word deception is a key reason why this transracial equals transgender argument often equals transphobic. Not to mention how gender identity and
yeah, because there's no explanation why transgender people, by the same token, aren't deceiving people. Bearing in mind, you're supposed to regard them as the opposite sex even though they're not. They're not going to tell you that they're actually a male generally, for example.
Racial identity function quite differently in society as well. Society giveth and taketh away privileges based on our gender, but race also plays an important role in forming this overall American hierarchy. For that reason, what I like privilege-wise being female, I make up for to some degree being white. Well, Rachel Dolezal told Matt Lauer in that Today Show interview that she began drawing herself with quote the brown crayon when she was a kid. She nonetheless...
Yeah, so she did listen. Oh my God. How is this not exactly the fucking same? What do you think of the studies that say trans people have brains that resemble the sex of their desired sex? I think it's very conclusion first stuff. Like, they often don't really lay out what a female and male brain are. Sometimes they measure these brains like post-HRT, which completely defeats the purpose. They're often very tiny, like sample sizes. They don't seem like they're about much. What I find is, like, we've been trying the trans brain stuff for a while, but like even WPATH doesn't want to know. Like, WPATH does not tell anyone to scan their brain. Trans rights activists don't want trans brains to be a thing because then you could get your brain scanned and be told, actually, you're not trans, you don't have a trans brain. You know what I mean? The transracialists are better ground to stand on than transsexuals, IMO. Yeah, potentially. I mean, if you have 1% black heritage, potentially you could call yourself black. but like you can't be 99% male and 1% female.
Was never growing up living life as a black girl and a black woman, the things that experientially define blackness.
Well, how can a male say that they grew up as a female? Like, you know what I mean?
Show interview that she began drawing herself with, quote, the brown crayon when she was a kid.
And the other thing is, some of these studies do actually do it like pre-HRT, and they're taking someone's word for it. Their gender identity is different to what they say to what their sex is. But the thing is, what happens if any of those people detransition? Then they were wrong about their gender identity? Then surely that completely calls into question any of the results of the studies. So it's based on like a construct that I don't even think really exists, honestly. So lots of problems with the trans brain stuff.
She nonetheless was never growing up living life as a black girl and a black woman, the things that experientially.
Yeah, just like I have no experience of growing up as a little girl. I have no idea what it's like to be walking home at the age of 13 and have some bloke like wolf whistling at me, you know what I mean? Stuff like that. I have no idea what it's like to be like smaller and weaker than a whole group of people. To be like alone with a man and feel a certain way because you don't know what's going to happen, potentially. Like so many things.
Define blackness, whereas a transgender person from childhood is growing up with that maleness or femaleness because of the way that gender identity operates inside of us.
This is pseudoscience. How does gender identity operate within us?
Regardless of what our bodies look like and how people treat us based on that.
This is nonsense. Why does she keep moving around as well? Like, what is this?
Dolezal may choose to call her.
I'm just going to stand 2 steps to the right for this shot. Okay. Got brain scans with just showing diversity. Well, yeah, I mean, the other thing is, what we're calling male and female brains, there's a bunch of crossover as it is. Like, you probably could find an archetypal male or female brain, but then most people have some mixture of the two. But they're still one sex or the other. It's bizarre. There's so many reasons why the trans brain stuff isn't working. And TRAs don't want it. WPATH doesn't recommend that you get your brain scanned. And WPATH pretty much sets the tone for most countries, you know?
Herself transracial and publicly identify as black, she will never be black in the same way that Caitlyn Jenner or Laverne Cox are women. As an addendum, things like skin lightening and eye reshaping aren't examples.
That is also a good point, by the way. Like the way that Rachel Dolezal is doing her hair and stuff with like all the curls and that. That's like a cultural thing. It's not because she thinks she's black. It's because she likes the culture and potentially grew up around the culture and is like imitating black women. But what black women are doing is like socially constructed. It's fashion, you know, stuff like that. And that's, again, pretty analogous to what trans women are doing. Like, I don't know, man. I have long hair. I wear certain kinds of clothes. I wear makeup. That's not a biological thing to do. That's stereotypes. It's imitation, ultimately. And I'm, you know, upfront about it. But I don't literally think I'm a woman, so.
Of people molding their outside appearance to match some inward racial identity, but rather chase aesthetic ideals in search for cultural status. For instance, in the case of Michael Jackson, regardless of how much skin bleaching and facial reconstruction he underwent, he would never be deemed white. All of which has got me.
Well, he also had vitiligo. I mean, Jesus.
Thinking that transracial in this context is nothing more than a dangerous distraction away from the real lived experiences of both transgender people and people of color.
Yeah, there you go. So that's the kind of thing I kept coming across, looking into like the transracial thing. Who wants to emulate? Yeah. And it's like fashion choices. It's not, this is what black people are. Painful listening to this chick talk just by hearing her use the word cis tells me she subscribes to some sort of trans ideology. Yeah. And like, gender identity always goes completely unexplained, you know what I mean? Like, it just is a thing and it works a certain way and just accept it and deal with it. When it's like, well, no, it's not been explained in any way. It's not been shown how we know any of this. It's just people saying this is my experience, but people get all kinds of stuff wrong about themselves all the time. My Ethiopian neighbors would be very polite but giggling if I claimed blackness. Yeah, I mean, I assume like most people would think you're joking if you did that kind of thing. And maybe that originally was how people felt about like trans, but it kind of took traction somehow. Yeah, I kind of wonder, what if it was the other way around? What if like transracial was this thing that loads of people were doing and transgender was the Rachel Dolezal thing? Everyone thought it was nuts, you know? It's interesting. It's interesting what we choose to believe and what we reject and why.